Good morning and welcome to Daf Yomi, the Seches Moed Katan Daf Chafhei, number 25. We're still a couple days behind. Today we're going to do Chafhei and Chavav Mirta Hashem. Let's get right into it. The Mishnah says on the bottom of Dalam and Beis, In Korin v'lo Cholzin v'himavarin el Krova Shalmeis. You don't rip your clothing. You don't bare your shoulder. Ein Mavarin. Mavarin is the Sudas Havara. It's the consolatory. Is that a word? The meal to console the mourners that's made by other people, bagels or whatever you give them. The only people who are partaking these things are the Krovov, are the Zion Krovim of the maze. In Avar el Almita's Kufa, you only do Hasudas Havara on a Mita's Kufa, on a table that's erect, a table with legs or a bed with legs, as opposed to Kvias Amitas when you put your mattress on the ground and it's not supported by legs. All right, so the Gemara says on top of Chavhei Amenalev, Filu Chacham. Is this true? The Mishnah says only by the Zayin Krovim. Even when a Chacham, a Talmud Chacham dies, a big Talmud Chacham, a big sage dies, also, is this the truth? Is it halacha? When a chacham dies, everyone is considered to be his relative. So if everyone is considered to be his relative, so it's not like the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says, "Kol krov salkadai." Does it really mean that everyone is his relative? Not everyone is a relative to Talmud Chacham. Some people would rather be the relative of Talmud Chacham. Some people wouldn't rather be the relative of Talmud Chacham. Ella hakol kikrov. Everyone is like krov. Hakol korin alav. Everyone rips their clothing if they hear about Talmud Chacham died. Hakol cholten alav. Everyone bears their shoulders. Hakol mevarin alav brachava. Everyone is treated to a sudas havara in the street. Lo sricha. The right answer. A Mishnah is talking about the lav chacham. A Mishnah is talking about the case of a person who dies who is not a Talmud Chacham. The Adam kosher. The Gemara persists. The Gemara says, let's say he's an Adam kosher. He's an upstanding individual. He's like Rechnitz. He's like Hertzka, Ralph Hertzka, featured prominently in the Mir ads for their dinner. It's interesting in the ad they started off the ads. They had a picture of Nosson Tzvi Finkel, who was the iconic leader of the Mir Yerushalayim. He was basically, it was like sort of like a painting that was like faded, like you can barely see his face, his outline, and they had big pictures of Shalom Yehuda Rechnitz and Ralph Hertzka, the big donors, the big philanthropists who take on a huge burden in supporting Mir Yerushalayim. They were figured prominently in the ad. I was noting to my wife that, two dinners were featured in Mishpacha magazine. One was a dinner for the Yeshiva of Long Beach, and they had a big picture of the late Rosh Yeshiva of, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Rafigelstock or something like that. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He was the big Rosh Yeshiva there, and in following ads, they also had pictures of the Rosh Yeshiva interacting with other Rabbanim, as opposed to the Mir ad, barely a picture of the building, barely a picture of the late Rosh Yeshiva, Nosson Tzvi Finkel, a huge picture of Rav Hertzka, Reb Hertzka, and Reb Shlomo Yehuda Rechnitz, because they're the big donors. I told my wife, I think the Mir has it right. I mean, these dinners are meant to raise money for the yeshiva, so when you see, look at the kavod they do, the honor they give to the big philanthropists, you want to be a philanthropist. You see a dinner with pictures of a Rosh Yeshiva, I mean, it conjures nice memories of Talmud Chacham, but I don't think it has the same effect in bringing in the amount of money that you want to bring in. But I'll tell you one thing that I told my wife, that a little bit a different nuanced view of what was going on is that it's not just that you see big philanthropists, you want to be a big philanthropist. Is that when you see a Rosh Yeshiva, you don't think of fun. You don't think Rosh Yeshivas are very serious people. You think of dedication to Torah, dedication to serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You don't think of fun. You see a big balabas, he's a balabas, he's having a good time in life. He's making a lot of money, he's enjoying himself, going on nice vacations. So when you see big philanthropists, big rich people, it conjures up in your mind fun. And I was looking through some of the other ads in Mishpacha magazine, and they had one ad about a new day camp, a new camp, a sleepaway camp for boys, and the top, on the bottom, the most prominent thing was a picture on the bottom of the boys in the camp having fun on a water slide. And the top, it had the names of the rabbanim and which yeshivas they come from in Lakewood and Muncie, the show. And the whole feature of, I was telling my wife, the whole message of this ad is to explain that your son is going to have a fun time, but it has to be kosher fun, kosher fun. That's the way it works in the yeshivish world. We want to have fun, but we want to do it with a hechsher. With a hechsher, you put the rabbanim on top, even though the picture is featured more prominently, to show you. And they teach all the wording is about that. Have a fun time with the right supervision and the right role models. That's basically the message of the From World. I was going through other ads to check out if I was right, and I think the Mirror also featured that. They had these balabatim who are both an expression of seriousness. They're wearing their black hats. There's even a picture, I think, in one of the ads where they're shaking the hands of Leslie Finkel. I don't know if that's just photoshopped or that actually happened. But it's fun with seriousness. They're wearing black hats. They're serious. They're dedicated to the supporting Mir Yeshiva, but at the same time they represent fun, and that's what we want in the Haredi world, American Yeshivish world, not the Israeli Haredi world. Kosher fun. We want it fun. We want it to be a hechsher. Why am I speaking about this? Adam Kosher, who's an upstanding man. I would say a philanthropist, someone who donates money to Torah. If that's the Gemara's Adam Kosher, if you hear about that he dies, you have to rip over your clothing. Why does a person's children die when they're young? In order that he should be a serious person, and when another kosher dies, he should be misabel, he should mourn him and cry about him. So the Gemara says, he has to go into mourning. He has to lose his children, his security in life. His children provide him security in old age to take care of him, in order that he should learn this lesson. It's such a severe penalty. It's only as a punishment because there was an incident where he should have cried over Adam Kosher's death and he didn't. I should call a bocham Adam Kosher, and also anyone who cries and mourns the death of Adam Kosher, they forgive all his sins because he had honor for him. So the Gemara answers the law of Adam Kosher. Mishnah is talking about someone who's not a chacham, he's not also an Adam Kosher. Either kai has, the Gemara says, persists. The Gemara says, if he's standing there when the person dies, you still have to rip their clothing, even if you're not one of the Zayin Karovim. The San Yerushim and Ozer Omer Omer Al Meis B'Shatz Tzias Neshama. If you're standing there when someone dies, a Jew chayiv l'kroa, you have to rip your clothing. Mazah Domel Sefer Torah in this rough. We're going to see a Sefer Torah gets burnt. You see it, you have to rip your clothing. Shechayiv l'kroa. The Gemara answers our Mishnah talking with the law kai hasim B'Shatz Tzias Neshama. He's not standing there when the person dies. Kinach nafshe the Rav Safra. When Rav Safra died, the rabbis didn't rip their clothing about when he died. Amri lo gamrina minay. They said we didn't learn anything from them. Amar lahu Abaye. Abaye said mitan is right. Say a Rav Shemay. Doesn't say your rabbi who died. Chacham Shemay. A chacham who dies. He was Tam Chacham Tanya. V'od kol yomash masai say a pumin b'mid Russia. Also, when you're learning Gemara, you're learning the words of Rav Safra. You're quoting his name. So in a sense, he is even like your Rebbe. They thought, he already died, and we lost the opportunity when we heard about that he died to rip our clothing. We're not going to rip anymore. Abaye said to him, it's in fact not true. Tanina, Chacham calls man sha'oskin behesped. Chacham, as long as they're engaged in eulogy, sometimes you eulogize the Chacham for a month, maybe more. Chayav in the Kroa, you have to rip your clothing. Several mikral altar, they wanted to rip their clothing right away. Amar hu Abaye, Tanya Chacham kvodo bespedo. the proper time for ripping your clothes is when you hear the hesped. So the next hesped you hear, the next eulogy you hear for the chacham, then you rip your clothing. Rav Huna, when Rav Huna died, they wanted, when they buried him, to bury him with the Sefer Torah. Amar Rav Chisda said to them, in his life he was very careful about this, not to put a Torah on the same level of his bed. Hashta leikum le'ab, and now we're going to do it when he dies. Rav Tachlifa said, I saw Rav Huna, the boy Lemesa Purye. He wanted to sit on his bed. There was a Sefer Torah lying on his bed. He turned over a jug, a box, on the floor of Osif Sefer Torah. He made a place for Sefer Torah, so he shouldn't sit on the bed. Alma Kasavar also Sefer Torah Munachala. You can't sit on a bed. The Sefer Torah is Munachala. Now, could you sit on a bed where Sfarim are? Yes, you can. You see clear from here, only Sefer Torah. Why would you assume that Sefer Torah is like a Sefer, a regular Sefer, like a Gemara? We know clearly from the Gemara in Megillah that a Sefer Torah has the most Kedusha, and the Gemara says Chumshin have lesser Kedusha. So why would you assume that because of Sefer Torah, so I'd apply it also to Chumshin? This is probably a chum that a lot of people take upon themselves. They won't sit on a bench. They won't sit on in shuls it happens. A lot of unorthodox shuls. You go to a shul. I remember one of the young Israels, the young Israel West Hempstead. A lot of people leave their sidurim on the bench. There's long benches over there, and they put the siddur when they're done davening. They just put it on the bench. And some people, actually me, when I was younger, I also refused to sit down on it. I would take the siddur and I would move it to a different bench, or I would put it back on the shelf in order not to sit on a bench with a siddur on it. A siddur is maybe less kedusha than even a chumash. And some people actually turn the siddur upright, so it was like standing, leaning against the back of the bench. They felt that was a little better. But you see from this Gemara that it's only a Sefer Torah. Don't equate a Sefer Torah with a chumash, and definitely not a siddur. You're perfectly allowed to sit on that bench, just not a Sefer Torah. It's a psak halakha. It's pretty clear from the Gemara. Why should you make chumras that you don't have to make? So the Gemara says, Lo hava nafik mipurya mibaba. His bed, where he was dead, he died on, it was too big, it wouldn't fit out the door. Savar l'shalshule derech gagin. He wanted. Huh?
When are they going to be all finished?
This year, I don't know, in like 10, 15 minutes. Why?
It's 12 o'clock they're having the shiur here.
12 o'clock. Oh, man.
I'm sorry. Should have told you before.
All right, so a couple minutes, I'll move. So the Gemara says, the Gemara says he wants to move, and they're having a share in 5 minutes. We'll have to move in the middle. They try to take him out. They wanted to take him, to lower him down through the roof, take him out of the roof and lower him down through ropes. The kavod for chacham, burying him, you have to take him out of the door. They wanted to move him to a different bed that would fit out the door. We learned from him himself. The chacham is covered in the bed where he dies. How do you know a Talmud Chacham is kavod is to be buried in his original bed? And they died in Shneimar Yekiva was Aron Elokim El Agalach Hadasha. It says by the Aron, when they were taking him, David was taking him with a plishtim, he put the Aron in the new Agal, the new wagon. The new wagon, meaning that was the one the plishtim gave. He didn't change it to a different one. So we learn from a Sefer Torah to a person. Sefer Torah is often compared to a Talmud Chacham. You don't put it on a new one. Paras Baba V'Afkua, what they had to do in order to get him out of the door, they had to break down part of the doorway, make it larger, enlarge it, and take him out. Pasach Aleh Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba gave a eulogy. Roya Rabbeinu Shtishalav Shechina. He would have had Shechina on his shoulders. El Shabavel Garmula, because he lived his entire life in Bavel, so he wasn't Zocha to Shechina. Ma'aser Rav Nachman Bar Rav Chisda, Rav Chisda said Israel Shiruv. Amrle Rav Chanan Bar Chisda. Also, some say Rav Chanan Bar Chisda. Haya Haya davar Hashem el Yechezkel and Buzi HaKohen be'eretz Kasdim. He says that Hashem spoke to Nevuah. He spoke to Nevuah. It's definitely Hashras Hashchina and Yechezkel in the Chaldean lands, Bavel, Syria. So that was the outside of Eretz Israel. When his father heard this answer, he hit him, so to speak, with his shoe. Don't give these answers which don't make any sense. Because Yechezkel already had the Shekhinah when he was in Eretz Israel. So when the Bavel already had it, so continue. But Rav Huna, who just died, he lived in Bavel his whole life, so he was never zochet the Shekhinah. When they brought Rav Huna to Eretz Israel to bury him, Rav Huna Asti, they told Rav Huna's coming. Amru ki avina hasam. When we went to Bavel, lo havalan blu yereshim, he was so much greater, we couldn't pick up our heads, even though we were big rabbis. We couldn't say anything in front of him because he was greater than us. And now he's coming over here. He shouldn't be coming over here. He's going to demote us from our positions. Asa Basrain. Now we're going to go after him. We should follow him. He's disgracing us by coming here. He said, he told him he's not really coming in life. He just died or bring his Aron here. So Rabbi Ami Rasti Nafak, they went to escort him to his burial. Rabbi Ela Rechanina Lo Nafak. Ela Rechanina didn't feel the necessity to escort him. He got the Amri Rabbi Ela Nafak. Alternatively, Rabbi Ela went escorted him. Rabbi Rechanina Lo Nafak. Rechanina didn't. The Nafak my time. Why did you follow? The person who followed him did follow him. Why? The Sanya Aron Shover Makom. Let's say he dies in New York and he's buried in Israel, goes to a new place in Eretz Israel. Om Lama Shura, the Brisa says you when he comes to Eretz Israel, you do line up to offer condolences while he's being buried. When the meal after the burial, you say Berachas Havelim, so special brachos and Mesachas Ksuvos. When you have that pseudo Tanchumei Havelim and you go Menachem during Shiva, the Lanafak, person who didn't escort in my time, the Sanya Arona over Makom and Makom, and Aron comes from one place to another. You don't do a shura and you don't say Berachas Havelim Tanchumei Havelim. Kashna Adadi. These brises seem to conflict with each other. Lo kasha. Kasha shildo kayamas, kam b'shayin shildo kayamas. If his skeleton is still intact, then when he comes to the new place, his skeleton is still intact. Then all the halachas of consoling the mourners apply. If his skeleton is not intact, then they don't apply. Rahuna shaldo kayamas hava. Rahuna himself, his skeleton was intact when he came there to Israel. The one who didn't go out to escort him, he didn't know that the skeleton was still intact. He thought it wasn't intact. And they said, where should we bury him? Rav Huna rebates Torah B'Yisrael. Rav Chia rebates Torah B'Yisrael. Rav Huna, so they said, he should bury next to Rav Chia because Rav Huna taught a lot of Torah to Yisrael. And Rav Chia also taught a lot of Torah to Yisrael. Hava man Yisrael hava man ma'ayil. Like who's going to bring him into burial? Apparently, it's scary to go into a kever and to bury someone else. Okay, now we're going to move now because we're about to start a shir here. So let's move over to a new location and continue the shir there. We're not going to stop the shir. We're just going to keep it going. All right, so let's move. Anyway, give an update on my channel, what's going on. We have a lot of exciting programs that we're doing. I have a new project that I'm working on, a video started about a series, webisode I think it's called, where you have episodes like TV episodes on your YouTube channel or on the web, on the internet. So we're going to be doing that, and it's going to start with Gedolim stories, the stories of the lives of Gedolim. I'm starting with specifically Aaron Kotler, who wasn't discussed so much in the Art Scroll books. So I want to discuss him a little more. Then hopefully Rav Shach, Aaron Kotler I'm in the middle of. It's going to be really good. I'm really excited about this. And also have some videos coming out about my experience in the hospital before and after the birth of my recent daughter who was born, named Sarah. and a video of what it's like taking over in the house, acting as now not just a father but a mother, go through different jobs of fathers and mothers, and the quote unquote supposed to have a shukfus. It's the way people look at it. They look at. Sorry about this. They look at marriage. They look at marriage as a shutfus. Shutfus in the husband and wife. The husband has certain duties. The wife has certain duties. So I'm gonna get into that a little bit and show my expanded role in the house. All right. So the Gemara says they wanted to know who's gonna bring him to burial. He says, I'll bring him into burial. It's scary to bring someone to bury someone in a place where such hallowed Gedolim are buried. Sorry, I'm worthy because I was already proficient in all of Shas at 18 years old. I never saw accidental semen come out of me. I learned from him, and I know his personal sidkus. The Yom Echad, what was an example? Yom Echad is a pichale retzua, the tefillin, his strap of tefillin turned over. V'yasev Allah arban tanesi, he fasted for 40 days. Havagani Yehudim mimei davua b'cheskia mismole. Rebchia was buried next to his two sons. Yehuda, his son, was buried on the right, and Chizkiah was buried on the left. Amar Yehuda l'Chizkiah. Yehuda, when he was coming in, the Aron of Rav Huna, Yehuda said to Chizkiah, Kumi dichtech, get up from your burial, meaning, I don't know, the bones should become unburied. The Lavo Rechara dekaim Rav Huna bahade. Rav Huna, it shouldn't be Rav Huna standing here without a place to be buried. Bahade dekaim, when he exited his state of burial, kam bahade amuda denura. Pillar of fire came out with Chizkiah. Chazi Rav Chaga Ivis. Rav Chaga saw this pillar of fire. He was afraid. Zakfe Laroni. He took the coffin, left it there, or maybe he placed it in the burial site. V'nafak Asa, and he left. The Haidlo Anish. Why wasn't he consumed by the fire? Anish. Leanish Anish Mishum the Zakfe Laroni the Rav Huna, because he left the Aron there, so it blocked the fire. When Rav Chisda died, they wanted also to put a Sefer Torah on his burial bed, his bier, to accompany him. Rav Huna was the Rebbe of Rav Chisda. Rav Huna didn't hold of this. Rav Chisda also wouldn't want to do this. They all thought not to baste or to sew in an amateur fashion the garments they rent over him. Once you bury him, once you return from burying him, you turn your faces away from burying him, so then you could unprofessionally sew the rip that you did over him, over his death. When Rab Rav Huna and Rav Huna died, and they brought them to Eretz Yisrael. Top of Chav Hamid base. Kimatu Agishra, when they came on a bridge, at a Passover bridge that was only able to fit one coffin at a time, Kamu Gamle, the camels which were holding the coffins, they stopped. Amarlu Ahutaya, an Arab who was there, he was in charge of burying them. Hi, what's going on? Amarli Rabban and the Ka'av, the Yikra, Adadi, even in death, they're doing honor to each other. Maramar Marneil Maresha, Maramar Marneil Maresha. They're saying secretly in death, you should go first. Amar Dina, who the Rabba Rahuna, so the Arab said, it makes sense to Rabba Rahuna, Leil Beresha. He should go first. Why he said that, I don't know. Gamle, Khalib Gamle the Rabba Rahuna, so Rabba Rahuna's coffin passed first. Nadar Kache Vishine the Hutaya, he was punished because apparently he chose the wrong person, so his molars and his canines, or I don't know, incisors. There's different types of teeth you have. Your front four teeth, the two on top, two on bottom are called your incisors. Then you have the canines. Then you have the premolars, the molars, and the wisdom teeth. A total of 32 teeth, if you're wondering. The hutaya pasach aleu yanuka when they were eulogizing these rabbis or Rabbi Rahuna, they eulogized Hahu Yenuka Gaza Yeshishim Allah Mi Bavel. A certain child gave a eulogy. Gaza Yeshishim Leha, tree was cut down. Mi Bavel, from Bavel. The Imo say from Bachamos, he had wars. His writings on the Gemara are like writings of wars on Torah. Kas v'kapod huchpelu liros b'shod v'shever. Kas v'kapod, these type of birds that only are found in desolation. They came actually to see the funeral. B'shod v'shever. Haba mishinar katzaf alolamo. Though someone who comes from Shinar, from Bavel, Hashem got angry at his world. Chamas mimenu nefashos, he stole lives from us. V'samach b'hem kala kadasha. And Hashem was happy that he is like over a new bride. He's getting these pure souls in heaven. Hashem, who rides the high skies, is very happy. Boy love nevesh naki v'tzadik. That these tzaddikim came to be with him. Ravina died. Pasach aleu savdana. The person eulogized him. Tamarim heniu rosh al tzadik ketamar. The Tamarim cut off their heads, because a tzaddik who was compared to a palm tree died. Nasim leilos kiyamim, we should mourn him for days and nights. Al mesim leilos kiyamim, because he made his days like nights by learning Torah all the time. Amalei Rashi, the Bar Kapuk. Rashi said to Bar Kapuk, who's a professional eulogizer, Hu yoma my amr, what are you going to say when I die? Amr le amina im ba'razim nafla shal heves, if by cedar trees, like a Rashi, a big gadol, a fire consumed them. Mayasu Yisuvikir. What are people going to do with hyssop branches, which are smaller? Levyasa Mechika Huala. If the Levyasa was caught with a fishing, what's it called? The thing you put to catch fish, the bit that you use to catch fish. Mayasu Dage Rekik, the small fish of the pond. What do you do? Benachal Shotef Nafla Chaka, in a river that's very powerful, a person died. Mayasu megavim. What are people going to do from small ponds of water? Amalei Baravin. Baravin was another professional eulogizer. Said, you shouldn't mention bits, catching a fish with bits and fire by tzaddikim. I mean, so he said, what would you say? Cry for the mourners and not for the person who was lost. Shehila menucha, because the person who died is going to rest. We're going to be mournful. We're going to have a big loss. We don't have the tzaddik with us. Chalash daite. Yashi didn't like either of these. Alayu isabach karayu. Their feet turned around backwards. Ahu yoma la'asu la'asbudei. That day they didn't, and when he died, Ravashi, they didn't come to eulogize him. Ravashi lo bar kepud chalitz lo bar avin chalitz. He said in a different place they can't do chalitza, these eulogizers, because you can only do chalitza, you have to take off your shoe, and only when you have normal feet, not feet that are turned around. Rava kava asal diglas. Rava, when he came to the Tigris River, Amalei le bar avin kum ema milsa. He said to Bar Avin, who was a eulogizer, come say something. Kaiva amar bo rov shlishis b'mayim. Rov of the shlishis, Am Yisrael is referred to a third of the nation, somewhere in the Nevi'im. Rov shlishis, he was considered like a majority of Klal Yisrael b'mayim. He fell in the water. Zachav rachim ta'inu ma'acharecha k'ishim ebala. You should remember us and have pity. Ta'inu mecharecha, we strayed from you, kishim ibala, like a woman strays from her husband. Altaz nichenu ka'aves me'mara, ka'os me'mara. Don't leave us with these bitter waters. Rav Chanin chassid ben Nasiya. Rav Chanin was the son-in-law of the Nazi's house. Havaloa kahavule boni. He didn't have any children for many years. Boy racham, he davened fervently. Vahavule. He eventually had children. Oh, Yoma, when the day when they were born, the Havale nach nafshi died. Pasach savdana. Eulogized Simcha letuga ne'apcha, a day of joy turned into a day of mourning. Sasa v'yagon nidbku be'es simchaso. Sasa and v'yagon, joy and lamenting joined together. Be'es simchaso nenach be'es chaninaso avachanino. At the time of his happiness, there was groaning. Be'es chaninaso avachanino. In the time of favor, he lost his favorable one. Asikule Chanan al Shmein. Because of this, they called him Chanan, grace on his name. It was a present. Chanan, Chanina.
Hashem. Kinach nafshi Rabbi Yochanan pasach alei Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar. Rabbi Yochanan died. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Elazar gave the following eulogy: Kasha yom Yisrael yom ba'Hashem Shizarayim. And this day is as terrible for Klal Yisrael as the day when the sun sets early in the afternoon. That day when the destruction of Beis Hamikdash, the sun will set in the afternoon. Amar Yochanan says Yom Shal Yeshayahu. Yochanan says not the Beis Hamikdash. It's talking about the day of Yeshayahu, the demise of Yeshayahu when he died in the war. Kinach nafshe. It says in Tainus. Paranecha. Kinach nafshe. Yochanan died. Inyasi Rabbi Ami Shiva v'Shloshim. Rabbi Ami, he sat Shiva and Shloshim for Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Abba, Breder Rabbi Chia, Kibar Abba, Rabbi Ami, the Abba, the Garmi, who the Abba, he followed his own sheet, though. You don't have to, this is not the Allah. Adache, Rabbi Chia, Bar Abba, Rabbi Yochanan. I feel a Rabbi, Shalom, the Chachma, and a Yoshev, Alav, Ella, Yom Echad. Even if he's a Rebbe, you only sit one day of morning. Kinach Navshid, the Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera, the Pasachal, Husapadna, the eulogizer, opened up. Eretz Shinar Haravi, Alada, Bavel, gave birth. He was born in Bavel, Eretz Sivi Gildash Shah. Eventually, Rabbi Zera moved to Eretz Israel. He grew up in Eretz Yisrael. Oina Amra Rekes ki Avda Klichem Dasa. Rekes is Tveria. The Gemara Megillah discusses this. It's lost its precious jewel. Ki Nach Nafshe Rabbi Avao and Rabbi died Achisu Amudi the Kisrei Maya. The pillars of Caesarea. There's a place in Eretz Yisrael called Caesarea near the Mediterranean. The pillars there the Romans built gushed out water. The Rabbi Yossi Shvui Marzavi. The gutters. Poured out a lot of water. The Zipori Dama, they poured out a lot of blood actually from the gutters in Zipori. The Rabbi Yaakov, Itchamiu Kochavi B'Yamama. Rabbi Yaakov died. The stars were seen during the day. The Riasi Yakru Kolilni. Riasi died. All the trees were uprooted. Rochia Nachisu Kipi the Nura Merakia. Balls of fire came down from heaven. Rochia died. The Rabbi Nachum Yosi Shto Salmai Nevahabu Lamachal Tzaya. All the coins that had surahs on them, they had the prince of the president or whatever became flattened. Or Tanchum Barchias Kisatsu Kolandartia Tanchum Barchaniana died. Chia died. All the statues, the big statues in the world, were cut off. They cut off their heads. Yashav Ichtaru Shivin Machtarsa. When Yashav died, 70 tunnels were tunneled through. People stole money because in his merit, no one stole anything. In the Harda, the Hanuna and Achisu Kipi the Barda, and Hanuna died. Borad, which is hail, came down from heaven. Rakia, the Rabbi of Yosef Nasha Kipi the Prasa, the Rabbi Yosef died. The banks of the Euphrates, actually Kipi is the arch of the bridge that went over across the Euphrates. The arches collapsed, the bridge collapsed. Abai Rava Nasha Kipi the Diglas, Abai and Rava died. The arches of the bridge over the Tigris River collapsed. When the Marsharshia died, it says the palm trees produced thorns. All right, we'll stop here. We're a little over time. They want to take over my room. That was a problem. Bye.